Hi, I'm Erica Durance. You're in the House of L. Cue the music.
I am so excited to be joined today by my first Smallville 25 guest of this year, talking to the cast, talking memories, talking all things that encompass a quarter of a century of this show, which makes us all sound really old when we say that. Erica Durance, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Derek. I look forward to chatting with you. You've had this podcast for a long time. We've been on cons together, so I feel
Yeah,
like we're just having a little more relaxed chit chat than talking in front of a bunch of people on a panel.
just you and me. Yeah, we don't have to worry about anybody else interrupting us right now, unless either one of our kids run in at any point.
that's
Um,
that's right.
You're right. I was talking to Al Goff the other day, and I had asked him if he had anything sentimental videos, things from early on that had never been shared. But one thing I specifically asked about was if anybody still had access to your audition, because I was super curious about. Don't freak out. He didn't. Just at the
Good.
outset, let me go ahead and tell you, I didn't find it. I tried, but I didn't find it.
Yeah.
Do you
No.
remember?
Thank
We've heard the
goodness.
story about Tom coming back early, from
Yeah.
hiatus and everything to kind of screen and chemistry test with you. But do you remember before that, before him coming in, and what? I know your introduction to the show obviously is a little bit different than the rest of the cast, and you may want to talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah,
About
they basically, season 4, they just did a little 4 episode arc introducing Lois, and I'm sure it was just kind of like to get that season going, just spice it up a little bit. So, when it came down as an option to audition for it, it was just, oh, we're bringing in Lois Lane for 4 episodes, and I've told people before I was pretty reticent to do it. I had kind of hit a little bit of a wall here in Vancouver, and there was a mechanism at the time, which was, we really only saved the juicy parts for LA actors. And so I think it was actually part of that reticence that may have made a difference when I went in, because I didn't have my regular anxiety. I just was like, okay, I'm going to do what I'm going to do and leave. And then they're going to pick somebody else. And so I just didn't expect anything. And then I got called into the production office in Smallville to kind of work the scene with their showrunner at the time in Vancouver. His name's Greg Beeman. So Beeman had me in and we
Mhm.
kind of worked it through. And then I flew down to LA to audition. And I'd done the testing process a few times for pilots and stuff like that. But it's kind of it's it's a pretty intense process. You get used to it a bit, but for people that aren't in the business,
Mhm.
it's quite intense. You have to go to the studio and then to the network, and there's a bunch of people and then lots of people watching, and it's a lot of pressure, and you have to sit in a tiny room with 3 other people that are competing for the same intense job and try to not make each other crazy. And so that just went by so quickly, and I got it. And they called me on my way back home in the airport, and then my first call was to my sister, of course. And I told her that I have this part and it starts Monday. Like I didn't know that either. And I land on Friday. I go to the studio on Saturday and I have to do all these test shots and, just kind of a photo shoot and hair and makeup and everything. And
Mhm.
again, because it was new, I didn't realize the intensity of it. And on that day, I had to meet Tom and read the scene with him. And I thought everybody was just kind of being really nice and kind of helping prep me, like, okay, I'm part of this thing and I'm going to, get to meet him. And that's so nice. And I didn't realize that it was a kind of a last final hurdle that I had to
Mhm.
go through. And we argue about this all the time, and he tells a totally different story. But yeah, like if it hadn't gone well, it would have been an issue. And so, like, I'm waiting in the office, and they put us in this like room in the corner. And of course, I have like nervous need to go to the bathroom all the time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And I like basically almost run into this like lumbering oaf coming out of the washroom. It was welling. I was like, oh, there he is. And then that made it weirder for me. But truth be told, when we got just chatting and going over the scene, he was really generous. He was super calm. And I think that really helped. And anybody that meets the guy knows that he's like your everyday human, and he makes people feel really comfortable. And so that helped. And then I started working, and the
Yeah.
rest is history. Yeah.
But before that, you even had ties to the show. before,
Yes. Yeah,
casting.
I on the other end of it, I was, as most actors struggling, they have a few different jobs, and so I was, working at an agency, and I was booking background on the show, so I had known about it for quite some time, and but from that side of it, so it was really, quite surreal. It was a very strange thing to be on the show, and then as I was working more and more, I'd be, doing the scenes and look around and know most of the background folks because I'd booked them before or knew them, and so that kinda created, a little stage fright at first, and then it became kind of fun.
You're coming into a show that's already 4 years on at this point. I know casting for a pilot and things like that are always tedious, but you were the new kid on the block at the time when the show was going through a lot of changes. Did you feel that walking on set? Was that a weight upon you at all?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm already somebody that is, very, very sensitive to other people, to their energy, to what's going on, and a huge feeling of like I really don't belong in this world at all. And I will say that people were, the cast was really friendly. They were really nice. But for a person that is grown up on a farm in Alberta, you're all of a sudden launched into this really well running show that's
Mhm.
really, really successful, and I felt like one of these things doesn't belong, like they did have a LA thing to them, and they had a, as well, Kristen was really, really chill. But again, if you see these people face to face like a Kristen or a Tom, they don't look like real humans, you know? They're so pretty. So I go up and I meet them and I'm like, "You've gotta be kidding me. I've gotta work with these people? Nobody looks like this in real life," you know? And I used to just give Tom such a hard time. I was like, "You are so pretty. Let's go." But, they were both really grounded and cool, and, but yeah, it just really, even when I look back on it now, I feel a little bit of that anxiety that I had when
Yeah.
I worked on it.
Well, and I mean, twofold. Not only are you walking into a show almost at the halfway point of the series, but you're playing such an iconic character.
Yeah. And
And
I again, I was lucky because everybody was they had their own vested interest in it working. Number 1, not to besmirch their character, but they had to help because they're starting this thing and I'm playing Lois. So they had a vested interest. And so with the creators and everybody behind it, they were very on top of like teaching me the ways they wanted it to go and how they wanted Lois to be. And so there was a lot of support for that. And then as I went along, I feel like they started to kind of write a little bit to my cadence, my way of speaking, as the Tom and Erica scenes, the Lois and Clark scenes went along and seemed to go well. Then they would write for that,
mhm.
and then I started to feel, a year or two in, a little bit more kind of grounded. Like, I don't think I'm gonna get fired today. But there was still just pressure. I'm a perfectionist, so
Yeah.
I really wanted to do well.
Did you feel any of that relief come off you after those 4 initial episodes and you were like, "Okay, well, that's it," and then automatically I mean, how long did you wait to get a call back? Because it didn't take very long for Lois to show back up at that point.
Well, I mean, they really kept me not really. It took a few weeks, a couple of months, and then I knew I was gonna do 13 that year, and then the next year it was 13. So, like,
Mhm,
every year, it was, like, a certain amount that I was gonna do. I never really knew. So, given my personality type and the largeness of that machine, it took me
mhm.
years before I started to relax, you know? And really, truth be told, I never really wanted it to go poorly. Like, I had such a different way of working than I do now. I don't know if it's just life kind of humiliates you enough that you start to let go and you realize that you're gonna make mistakes. Things aren't gonna be perfect, and it's okay to be that person that messes up on their lines. But yeah, it took me quite a bit of time to relax about it.
Was there a moment, was there something where you were like, "Okay, I feel like this feels like family now, like, at this point, I
Mm.
feel like I'm supposed to be here and belong."
I think, again, it was less about the people around me, more about my own neuroses. But I feel like when season 8 hit and
Mhm.
we started I had more episodes, I had more story, I had more to, like, get lost in, so I wasn't so self-aware. It
Mhm.
was in that season that I started to feel like, "Okay, I am one piece of this puzzle, and,
Mhm.
I have something to contribute." And so I think it was a little bit of everything. It was a little bit of being there longer, and then it was also because they brought me in more, and they started to develop Lois more. I wasn't just the comedic relief, you know? Um so so that really, really helped.
Obviously, yeah, more screen time, more helpful than in any way because you're getting
Yeah, well,
to
that tells you, right? Like, if you're working more,
right,
then it seems to be going all right. They're
right.
pretty ruthless that way, you know? Like, if things aren't working, you all of a sudden have no dialogue and no scenes left.
Yeah, yeah. But
So,
then, I mean, obviously,
um
going back to 2004, I mean, we, watching at the time, knowing the behind the scenes stuff with Warner Brothers and how they were trying to treat the movies versus the TV show and try to keep characters different and not confuse audiences and all that thing. But your presence was so I mean, I know I've told you personally before, but I feel like so many things elevated. I think Tom's performance elevated once you showed up and everything.
Mhm.
But for it to be clear from DC and Warner from the powers that be that we can only play in this lowest sandbox for 4 episodes and then you just knock it out of the park and or
Mm.
welcomed back, at least on this side of the screen, very easily. I don't know about
Oh,
on
well,
that
that's good
side, but
to
it
know.
was yeah, yeah. I mean, it
Isn't
was a
that funny?
very welcome
Everybody's
addition.
reality is so different. And,
Yeah, yeah,
all of this stuff is going on for me as I'm trying to, like, just figure it out, have fun, but also
right.
realize that there's, um, a little bit of pressure. I think part of what helped me at that stage is I didn't imagine it being anything more.
Yeah,
It was those 4 episodes, and it was a great gig, and I was gonna make the best of it because I was having so much fun. So there wasn't this, like, "If I do really well, I'm gonna work more," you know? It was like, "Okay, I'm done after 4, and let's just give it a go and have a great time," and then I got caught up in having fun with my fellow castmates too, and maybe that was part of what ended up working really well for those characters. And I was lucky too because I was a character that they needed that different flavor, you know?
mhm,
They had everybody that was so perfectly fitting all those other roles for them, and they had done that for 3 years, and they needed a shift, and it just helped that my character was written that way, you know? Um, Jeff Loeb was writing a lot of the voice of Lois at the beginning when I came in. I know Alan Miles kind of handed some of that over to him, and he
mhm,
wrote so many great zingers, and was so protective of her. And so, of course, then I say to everybody, they're like, "Oh, your Lois was so good," and all of those things. I go, "Yeah, but I was also given an amazing character." Right? Like, I was
mhm,
given somebody that could do so many different things, and they wrote all this wonderful dialogue, and I was allowed to be sassy. I wasn't in a box, right? One day I'm, yelling at someone, the next day I'm sassy, the next day I'm crying, I got to play all of that stuff. And so it- part of the opinion of me, particularly, I think is also swept up in all of the other people and their creative
mhm.
efforts and the timing and everything. So, yeah, it says something that we're talking about this 25 years later,
I know, I know.
you know?
Is it a
Yeah.
blur? I mean, no pun intended, but is it at this point, is it like just I mean, I know you remember days, but I hear, so many loving fans come up to you and ask you about your favorite costume or the favorite, you know, item of clothing that Lois got to wear or your favorite episode. And I know 25 years on, that stuff just becomes a wash on some things. Like you can remember days and you can remember elements, but like, is it just this giant 6-year blur after this long, or are there these moments and days that still hold on for you?
I do remember moments, days, specific costumes, specific scenes. It does have a blur quality to it. Is more like
Mhm,
a feeling or an energy that I have for that period of time in my life. What's interesting is if I watch some of it and the scenes are happening, I'll know the lines. So it's somewhere in
wow,
there. All the details are in there. I
yeah,
remember the scenes. All of a sudden, a bunch of stuff comes back to me, and I'll remember memorizing that or what have you, and it has that kind of really tangible callback. So when not that I've watched it a lot or anything, but if I see little snippets of it, then I feel like I'm right back there again. And maybe that's a funny thing with our
yeah.
memory, you know? when we look back, or,
Yeah, no.
people
Well,
play,
I mean, I
they hear a
can.
song, or there's a scent or whatever, and they're
Yeah,
right back where they were, and they
yeah,
thought they'd
yeah.
forgotten about it?
Is there one specific thing that just sticks out to you? You're like, as long as I live on my deathbed, this moment, I'm going to remember
Mm,
this. We were talking to Tom the other day,
mm,
and it was the three of us, and he was sharing that. I wish I could go back and put my hand on my shoulder and be like, "Hey, this is actually kind of fun. Like,
yeah,
maybe don't take this so seriously and have a moment." But
yeah.
it's interesting to hear the things he retains, and I'm wondering if that's the same for you.
I'm I had the luxury of more time to really take it in. He had the
Sure.
pressure of the show on his shoulders, and so it creates a different experience. But for me, if I think about moments, it's like I remember the excitement that I felt every time I left my trailer to walk to set.
Hmm.
I can like hear what it sounded like when I crunched on the gravel when I went, and I can still smell the smell of the outside, and the excitement that I had approaching, all that nervous energy and adrenaline and sense of purpose. And I don't think life feels that way for me now. It's different. There's different calls and different purposes, but that kind of when I look back and I remember being young at that age on this wonderful show, playing a character I loved, every time I went to go do a scene, that level of excitement and the possibility of what could spring from those moments, I don't think I've ever recreated
Hmm.
that. That was that farm girl from nowhere having the most cool thing happen to her that she didn't expect, you know? And I remember feeling that
Yeah.
every time I went there. So excited. I mean, Tom or Michael will tell you I didn't work with Michael a lot, but Tom will be like, "Holy crap!" Be like, what are you, what are you on? How much coffee have you had today?" Because I did. I feel like I was living a dream.
Well, and you grew up. I mean, grew up doing community theater, right? I didn't make that up, did
Yeah,
I? I feel like you and I've had that conversation at some point. So
yeah,
obviously, this was something in your blood. So I can only imagine walking out of your trailer and feeling those things, heading in front
yeah.
of the camera. And have you taken Lois with you and I mean, does she stay with you when you're in front of the camera for other things?
Uh, I suppose that aspect of my personality that is more prone to fight is still very
Mm,
much part of me. And because I am actually a pretty shy person, and I like to just stick to myself and do my own thing.
yeah.
And I have all my nerves that I get and that sort of thing. But when I'm down for the count, or when like the stress comes, or the need for performance, and I'm nervous, it's that aspect of my personality that comes forward to the forefront. And I think that that's the piece that some people saw that was, when they talk to me on cons or whatever, that aspect of Lois that's like, okay, well, like chin first, like we're gonna do this
Yeah.
thing. And that's my personal overcompensation for my own fears, right? But that definitely comes forward in other roles. And I think it's just too, I mean, it's not as sexy sounding, but like just the mechanism of doing that for so many years, you do bring those things with you to your
Mhm.
your new jobs and your new roles, because you're like, "Oh, I've been here before. It's okay. Like, I got this, and it doesn't really matter." And your need for perfection, and that kind of thing. And I think many people can say that if they were to look back on their career and themselves 25 years ago versus now, they would say, "Absolutely, those things I learned about myself come into all my new stuff." Yeah.
It I always love when you say you're shy because I know you are, but then
Yeah.
I see you talk to people and I'm like, "She's not shy at all. She's a really good actor." But when you started doing the cons and stuff, I mean, did you have to like, okay, I'm trying to think of what, like, maybe the first couple appearances of those you did now versus where you're at now where you're a pro at it. But, I watch people come up and talk to you and say the sweetest
Yeah.
things always.
People are so nice. Yeah.
People are so nice. Obviously, this a legion of fans the show has created, but
Yeah.
I can imagine how I would feel sitting there listening to all these glowing, things being said about me or something I did 25 years ago, and I wouldn't take it well. But is that something you had to adapt to when you started doing these public appearances?
Of course, I don't think there's very few people I think that can take positive comments
Yeah.
and be balanced with it. Either they reject them outright because it makes them very uncomfortable, or maybe some people really take it and it really goes to their ego in a weird way. But I think, it's what makes it easier for me in these cons is that I do fine if people are wanting to talk about something specific about themselves and their experiences and have a real engagement. And that's what they want to do. And they want to say what they felt watching the show. And I always, again, as I mentioned before in this, it's really less about me or about more about what I represent, and I realize that when they're saying these things, it's also, filtered through their sentiment and their experience and their projections and everything, so it doesn't go to my head in the way that I'm like, "Yeah, I was amazing." I
Yeah,
just go, "Hey," like, their experience of it was this, and they just wanted to share that, and I feel like it's just a really nice offering and a nice exchange, and so in that aspect, the cons aren't hard for me because I'm talking about something.
sure.
But if you put me at a work party, some kind of red carpet thing, or just throw me in the place where everybody's like drinking and hobnobbing, I'm terrible at that. And I was always really bad. I picked the six people that I was supposed to be connecting with and had my purpose, and I would go up to them and I was gone in an hour.
Yeah,
Because I was like, I'm going to talk to these people, thank them for my job, thank them for this and this and this and this. And I'm out because I didn't like that feeling of just being in a space. So that when I say shy, it's more that it's like I don't do
yeah,
well with surface level stuff. But if I was at one of those parties and somebody's having a hard time and wanted to talk to me about something, then I could talk for hours.
yeah,
But just don't talk to me about stupid stuff like
yeah,
what I'm wearing or like my hair or something because I got nothing. I got nothing to
yeah.
add to that conversation.
Why do you think this has lasted so long, this show? I mean, obviously, there's been other Superman incarnations over the years, but
Mm,
obviously, this is something different. This is special, lasting 10 years, and I know the fans are a huge component of that. Obviously, you can see that
yes,
sitting
they
at these
are.
cons. Yeah, but
Yeah.
what do you think has been the lasting or will be the lasting legacy of this show?
Well, again, it's part of the mythology. People
Yeah,
are desperate to see good win over evil. And depending on what generation you grow up in, it's even becomes more relevant. They want to see good values. They want to see good relationships. They want to see people choose the right thing. They don't want the bully to win. They don't want, they want to watch somebody be courageous, whether it's Lois with human frailties or somebody that's superpowered that could really do something, go in and say, no, evil exists where good men do nothing. And I think somebody had that in their mind when they wrote things with superheroes and stuff like that. People want to be a superhero. I think the thing with Smallville that resonates mostly from what fans say to me, because I have my own opinion, but I think so much of it is that it was Clark in his formative years. It
yeah,
was everybody in their formative years. And there's something with watching him struggle that most people found helped them in their life. They're like, I was him in high school. I was the person that, didn't fit in. And so it was watching him grow into that um perfection, because we've seen the other Supermans where he's just perfect and he does this thing and he has some struggles, but he's already achieved this. And I think people felt more seen when they watched a superhero struggle, a person
yeah,
struggle, and not fit in and not be part of the big group and try to find their own gifts. And then they would extrapolate that and make them, apply to their own lives. And the second thing that people talk about in watching the show is it was something good that they watched with their family. And
mhm,
so I think that's even stronger. It is the memories that it created for people in their life with their father or their kids or their grandkids. So really that speaks to that space in every one of us that wants to have human connection and especially with our family. We're biologically designed to do that. So if there's something
yeah,
that centers us there, then we're sentimental and we don't want to let that go. And I think that's why it's lived so long. It's the fans watching
and
it
I
together.
see that I see that when people come up to the tables for you and you're like, "I watched it with my mom or my dad," and then they've got their kid with them, and now I'm watching it with them, like, it's something that seems to be
Yeah.
passing down as well, which another reason it's gonna last. You say you that's what you extrapolate from talking to people, but what's your thought on that, different and apart from fans watching?
Each character in that show struggled. They struggled with
Mhm,
themselves. They struggled with not feeling like they fit in or having a difficult past or making the choices they didn't believe were the right ones and then tried again. I think the characters were courageous and fallible and relatable. And yeah, that's what I think really made a
no,
difference, even with
I
me being in it.
yeah, I don't disagree, I think that's correct. Um, as well, to go back kind of to the 2004, you getting that phone call, sitting in the airport, and, I mean, could you there's no way you could picture, obviously, and people always ask, "Did you know how big it was gonna be or how, how much of it was gonna change your life?" But there had to be something when you hung up that phone where
Oh, yeah.
where you were
Yeah.
10 steps ahead, yeah, 30 steps ahead at that point.
Um, it was, for a kid that thought she wasn't going to do anything or go anywhere, her world wasn't going to be very big. I think it was such a cool point of affirmation for me. Like many actors, we can all talk about the huge disappointments, the almosts. So we've all had
Mhm.
those, right? And watched those shows go on and people do really well with it. And I thought, oh man, my God, is like, this is my turn, to have a shot. And it is something that I love to do. That level of creative output has been really useful in my life. So yeah, I allowed myself to dream there a little bit, get excited and celebrate. There was brief celebration before it turned to massive anxiety.
Yeah, yeah. At least a
Yeah.
moment. A
Yeah.
free moment you got out of it. Do you
Hmm.
remember the first thing you filmed? Do you remember first day on set after meeting Tom, coming back on that Monday? Do you remember the first time the cameras rolled?
I do. Um, and ironically, it wasn't with Tom, it was with his stunt double. And it was when I arrive at the hospital and his stunt double is, I don't know what was going on with him, but he was walking around naked everywhere.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
forget what happened to
Amnesia,
Clark.
one of those
Right.
things.
As one does when they have amnesia.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I remember it was not a hugely scripted scene, which was good because I was pretty nervous. And I just remember being alone in the elevator and the slate kind of coming in and I went Smallville and had the date and everything and clicked. And I
Mhm.
remember the sound was so loud and then the door shut and I was like, oh fuck.
And muffled
What am I
inside, you hear
doing?
Erica go, "Cut!"
What the hell am I doing? So yeah. And then on that same day when Tom came in to work, we had a lot of elevator shots, and he could just like I guess it was emanating off of me, my fear. And I remember he just like we backed in, and he just looked over me and he's like, "It's okay," and like that was basically his energy for 7.5 years or 7 years. It's okay.
Well, it's good even if he couldn't do it for himself, at least he could do it for
Yeah,
other
yeah.
people.
I mean, maybe that's why we can do it for others. Is like we can see it enough for other people that we're able to offer that,
Yeah.
so maybe it's this interesting human thing that you know what it feels like so deeply you can't do it for you, but you're like I see you've got this.
Mhm.
And we can kind of offer each other that stabilizing force and good energy.
First episode, you arrive, scenes with Tom, scenes with Annette, and, John Glover. Had to pull that out of nowhere to remember the 3 people you were with in the first episode. Uh, second episode, you and Tom, Schneider and Annette, but also Michael Ironside, who we had a funny story from a couple weeks ago of you talking to him in Pensacola that you might wanna
Yeah.
share.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Michael grabbed well, we were getting out of the van. I think we were getting into the van or we were going to it. He was just grabbing some of my he just saw that I was carrying something, so he grabbed a box of my stuff to carry, which was super nice. And
Yeah.
then we all were piled into the van. I was, of course, at the back, and he's shotgun, and he's talking away. We get to the place, and you know what? I don't remember exactly what happened. I just know that he didn't know me at all.
He didn't. He turned and asked you. Well, you were talking to him like you knew him. You
I
were being
know. I was
nice,
like, well, this
obviously. You
would be
talking
rude if
like
I
you know
didn't.
anybody. Yeah,
And he
and
goes,
I
did,
just
oh, I
remember
know
this
what he goes. He
pause.
looks at me. He's like, did we work together? And I
It
went,
was
yeah,
20
I
years
played
ago.
your daughter, for a couple of years on something. But, my God, for the amount of work that that man has done and the people that
Oh
have
yeah,
cycled
no.
in and
Why
out
would
of his
you?
world,
Yeah,
why would he
why would you
know that? Because
retain?
he's not going to retain that. And I think even though it was a specifically, like, if you look at the familial chart, okay, he played my dad, big deal. But
Right.
I think we only had 2 scenes together in 7
Yeah.
years or 3. So that's not going to really make an impact on him.
No. No. But
But he
but
was funny.
from the other side of the screen, it's very funny to watch it all.
He's like, "Do I know you?" I was like, "Yeah, Michael, my name's Erica. We work together."
Yeah. Yeah. He
Yeah.
left, and you were like, "Bye, long lost dad."
Bye, long lost dad who doesn't care about me.
When you did get that call that you were coming back after those initial 4, and I know anxiety probably there's a way where anxiety was probably like, "Okay, I get to come back," where it was also, anxiety up, I have to go back at the same time, but did you feel that obviously meant she was well received, that you were
Yeah, of course.
a little job security there for at least a little bit longer?
Yeah, well, I knew then that I had, you know, 9 more episodes or
Right.
8 more episodes, whatever. 9 plus 4 is 13. Wow, good thing I was an actor.
Math.
Math sucks. I suck at that.
I was told there would be no math.
There's no math, please.
Yeah, no math.
So, yeah, of course, that was a little affirmation, and yeah, I definitely knew. I was like, okay, because when you have job security, you have a certain amount of money is coming in, and that was the first time something big had happened where I had that level of financial security from work. I was like, okay, I don't have to hustle and do all these other things at the moment. I can do some things, and I can just focus on this, and that was huge. Yeah, that was a really big deal.
Did in that time, because you were kind of thrust into it on on a Friday afternoon to a Monday for those initial 4, but did you ever think was there a time when you went back, you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna pick up a comic, I'm gonna pick up something that's gonna, tell me more about Lois Lane that I didn't already know?"
No, I did
Yeah.
not. I basically took the script and what's in front of me, and I had like I said, the very competent individuals around me that were shaping her to be earlier Lois. So that level of ignorance was actually helpful. You know, I had some recall of the Loises that I had watched. I'd watched Margot and Terry, and I Noelle a little bit. Like I knew that there was a certain level of chutzpah. A
Mhm.
lot of it's written in the dialogue anyway. um, but I didn't wanna go and, like, try to memorize what somebody else had done because I know my own neuroses. So, I just kept it. I tried to pretend, with all due respect to all the people out there, that she was just a chick, just a person living her life, not Lois Lane,
Yeah.
you know? And that level of putting blinders on for me, I think made a huge difference, allowed me to have a level of freedom because I would have been much, much too critical of myself if I had tried to be like Margot or something. It's just an unachievable thing. So there was that saving grace that she was a little bit younger. You saw her kind of struggling a bit to find herself. And so that made a big difference.
Do you feel the legacy of it though? You're talking about watching other people that came before you do it. I know had met Noelle before her passing. Margot, I assume you met on set, but I know you've did some cons
I
together
met her
with
at a
her.
con,
At one
actually. She
point.
was
Oh, in
amazing.
MonaCon.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know you and Bitsy are friends, obviously. But do you feel that now, and that when people come up to you and say you're the best Lois Lane, you're my favorite Lois Lane, do you allow yourself that compliment that's hard
I
to
don't
take,
feel
or
the
do you?
legacy as applies to me at all. Just like I don't,
Yeah,
it isn't even the same stratosphere as those ladies to me. So it just feels like a really lovely thing. And I'm so grateful people are saying those things. And that it had a really good impact for them, but yeah, I kinda don't have myself in that category. It's a very weird,
I mean,
thing.
I get that from an actor's
I'm
standpoint, but it's also like, I mean, you've played the character more hours than most anybody has at this point. I mean, it would be
maybe.
between you and you would between it would be between you and
Be
Noelle, and I
between
don't know.
Betsy.
Yeah,
Wouldn't it be
yeah,
Bitsy or
yeah.
no?
But
Maybe Noel.
to see, she did 4 seasons. So,
Okay.
I don't know, you're peppered in those first few, and then obviously 8, 9, and 10 being in way more for
Yeah.
that, but, I mean, you'd at least be a top 2, top 3 for people who grew up watching it and obviously watch it now.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think of myself that way. I'm just thinking of, like, Erica, and I did this job for 7 years, and so maybe that blinder that I put on many years ago is still, like, it's intractable. It's still always
Yeah.
gonna be there, you know?
Does it does it feel like 25 years ago for you? Or 20?
No.
I mean, obviously not from 2001 for you, but does it feel like 20, 22 years ago at all?
No, that in some ways, very much so.
Right.
Um, but you know how it is with time, right? Like, it
Yeah.
feels like yesterday, and then all of a sudden I'm talking multiple decades. What?
Yeah.
I feel like that's something that I just did, like, maybe, 5 years ago.
Mhm.
So time is a very strange thing, how it moves so quickly, and yet, your sense of memory of it is so close at hand, especially now with all these cons, and we're talking about it, and it went back out, and it's streaming again and stuff like that. So there's definite, like, realistic it has been 25 years. I am not
Yeah.
25 anymore. But yeah, time is a funny thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. I know it's weird to go to the cons and talk about it. I'm sure it's weird just to sit here on mic and talk about it, but it's a funny thing to watch people. It's a funny thing for me to watch people who weren't alive when it came out that have discovered it now. Um,
Yeah, that's so
that doesn't make
cool.
me feel great, and I don't even have that much.
No.
I don't even feel like I'm part of it that much. So for you guys, I don't know how that feels.
Yeah, it's funny because I always wanna, like, make some kind of self-deprecating joke whenever somebody's like, "I just started it 10 months ago," and I'm like, "I'm sorry. This is me now. This is me at almost
But
50,
you look the
so."
exact same as you did then, so you can't go
No,
with that.
you
That
have sat
doesn't.
beside me at a table, it's not true. But I do
That
think
is
it's quite
true.
funny. I make this joke with a couple of my friends as well, is like, there's not very many actresses that wanna have a re-release of something they did 25 years ago as, like, direct comparison, and now you're gonna meet me publicly.
You don't want that picture of me right behind the
Right
microphone.
there, it's like, "Oh, many." But, it's good. It builds character, and it kinda teaches you about what really matters, like, so
Yeah.
it's okay.
Um,
Fuck it.
talking back about memories though, are there places where you would sit in different exterior locations, like at the farm or anything that was like, this is Erica's
Oh, yeah.
spot if I'm not in my trailer? Like, this is where I'm gonna go and I'm gonna find Lois over here for a moment.
Oh, well, one of the things I did was, well, I often wore my music. I had headphones on all the time. So,
Mhm.
especially if it was an intense scene or anything like that, then I'd often go off by myself and listen to my music. I would not wander too far away from where they had put us, like cattle were herded, and there's a chair and you sit at it. And many, many times I was found at my chair just going over my lines over and over and over and over again. But I had a place like in the barn where if there was something intense that I had to do, I would kind of go off and I would let somebody know that I was off in a corner somewhere. And that's where people could find me so that I didn't weird anybody out by being too intense.
Yeah.
Go over somewhere else
um,
and feel my emotions and then come back.
yeah, yeah. Get the feeling and then bring it back and
Yeah.
put it on screen. Um,
Yeah.
I want to know what you took from set because you've been coy about this before, and I know the mug. I know you have the mug, but I want to know what else you have.
um, I have the Lois Lane um,
You have the
nameplate that
planet
was on my,
nameplate?
yeah, I took that.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, I took my entire wardrobe because she
Nothing wrong
dressed
with
well.
that. She
She had
did dress
fancy
well. Yeah.
stuff.
She had good
Um,
labels.
and she had all the labels. She was a
All the
rich,
labels.
rich, rich reporter. Um, and other than that, I'm just trying to think if there's anything cooler that I took. I'm a real scrapbook person, so I scrapbooked a ton of cards and things that I got over the years, tons of pictures. I have little, like, souvenir, candids, Polaroids and stuff like that from way back in the day. Um, I tried to take one of my outfits, but they wouldn't let me.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I'm not like Michael, I don't have a million things. He
yeah,
took a lot
you
of
said
stuff.
I don't I don't think you could top the well, this is speaking as a journalist. I don't think you could top the nameplate though, the Planet nameplate. That's
Yeah,
a pretty good one.
yeah.
I've been trying for years to find the Daily Planet keychain, that Lois had, and I have yet to come
Oh, you know what?
across
I
one
might have that
anywhere.
in a box. We'll see, because I might have taken that one
Look at
too.
you. Look at you.
I'll have to go look through.
Go
Most of my
dig.
souvenirs are pictures, and then on
Yeah.
the last week of filming, I put out a 8x10 of Smallville, and I asked anybody to sign it that wanted to sign it.
Oh, that's
So I have
nice.
that at home, and I just have tons of, signatures and messages, kinda like I was the nerdy kid with looking, with the school
The
yearbook.
yearbook. Yeah, yeah. Nothing wrong with
I
that.
did that
And
for
I should say,
myself.
when I say for people listening, when I say mug, it is the work with me people. I assume that's the one you were talking about
Yeah,
that Lois always had, the
yeah,
striped one that was,
yeah.
yeah, very iconic, by the end of the series.
Oh, and
So
do you know what else I took?
please tell me.
I took my belt that said "Kiss my ass." I still have that. Still put it on sometimes.
I was gonna say, you still wear it?
I do.
Fashion has changed a little bit
Yeah,
in
but I
some
still
ways.
wear.
With like the cruise, second year of the cruise coming up this summer, and then salute to Smallville and all these other con appearances. Seeing what people prioritize,
Mm.
to be able to even have a moment with you guys is something pretty spectacular, I think, and not something you see from a lot of shows that ran 10 years. So obviously, I mean, it's part of the business now, these appearances and stuff like that. But I mean, just from your perspective, watching what people and I'm not saying this because of you guys, but obviously these cons are expensive, like these, and
Yeah,
people fly and people drive. I mean,
yeah.
that's and a lot of them aren't going to share those stories. I know some of them will be like, "Oh, I drove all the way from so and so to be here," but that's gotta be a meaningful thing to take away at the end of the day, watching people who literally gave up God knows what to be there and have a moment with you.
Yeah, it's actually kind of overwhelming sometimes. I'll
Yeah.
depending on who I've spoken to or their particular story, it is so meaningful. And I know that it's not about me per se. What is interesting it is that what people will do to reconnect with a version of themselves that is so important to them. Because that's all it is really. Is I'm there a live action reminding them of something that was important to them and makes that part of them come alive. And I just I really I treasure those moments. I take them very seriously. If anything, I feel slightly worried that it's underwhelming given what they've gone through and what they've done. And so that can plague me sometimes,
Mhm.
hoping that the connection was enough, that I gave enough of myself in that moment to make some of it worth it for them. And when it comes to something like the cruise, I find that I actually am quite rewarded after experiences like that. I get to know these people and all fascinating human beings with lives of their own. And um, you kind of end up is somewhat friendly by the end of it, and it's just, again, people connecting around something positive and how necessary that is. And I think that's why the cons and cruises and certain things have also taken an influx, not just for our show Smallville, but for many other television shows and that sort of thing. It's like people are looking for community, they're looking for positivity, they're looking for a human connection, a shared memory that was really good. Um, and so I feel like it serves that purpose for
Yeah.
people.
Did you find that early on with Community when you were looking at acting, when that was something you wanted to pursue, was that something important to you?
Finding a community?
Mhm.
Absolutely. I think that's
Yeah.
why I've always enjoyed um, theater and singing and all of that kind of stuff. It was trying to find my tribe, my group of people that think like me. And the moment I walk on a new set, I'm like, and I relax because I look around and I'm like, oh my goodness, like every department, I know where you're from. I can pinpoint who's in electrics and who's in props and who's in hair and makeup. And it feels like this, we're like, we say it, we're this traveling circus of people. And so you might be meeting a new person, but there's a similar vibe of creatives together. And it's very, very refreshing. Um, and I suppose that story would be true for anybody, depending on what their vocation is. But
Yeah.
definitely for me, I felt like I found my group of people when I'm working, and there's nothing like it.
You've got a guest appearance on Wild Cards coming up on the CW, and then also you're going to be on Tracker soon with
Yeah.
Mr. Hartley on
Yeah. Same.
CBS. Um,
Yeah.
I'm sure that was a lovely reunion
It
between
was
the two
very
of you
fun.
because you guys got to work a lot on the show.
Yeah,
Uh,
we did.
d- do you find the landscape has changed now when you're doing these appearances versus 20 years ago?
Um, I suppose everything's had a bit of a change. There's different levels of diversity, different people in different departments. Definitely the set vibe is slightly different, given everything that's gone on in life.
Hmm.
I would say that it feels a little different too, because when you come in as a guest star, you're there as a guest to dinner. So,
Hmm.
so there's a different kind of communication that you have with people. What I'd say is the most different is me. I am
Good answer.
getting tired. I was on Justin's show. We did a few days. They were really good. They put my stuff into a few days, and we had a couple of overnight shoots. And I was laying with my face in the pavement one evening at like four in the morning or something, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I was so tired. I could barely remember anything. And then there's like my body is like old and creaky. It's so I'd lay there and then my hip would atrophy and I'd try to get up and I was like, what is happening to me? I used to be the lady that ran in and did all the kicks. It's not happening anymore. Um So I feel like, yeah, I remember a girlfriend of mine who's about 20 years older than I am. She goes, wait until you're just like, I cannot do this, or this anymore. And back in my 20s, I was like, I would do anything people asked me to do. No problem. I got it.
Yeah.
Even if I was dying inside. No problem. No problem. Another hit, another punch, another this. I can do another all nighter. I can freeze my ass off. Like I can do all those things. And now I'm like, it's not worth it.
It's
I literally can't do this. I went away from his show of 2 nights, 3 overnights, and I had a killer flu. And I went,
oh no.
"I've changed. I have changed.
Mm. Yeah,
I
that's
want
no
warm
fun.
sunshine, studio shoots."
Yeah, inside.
Yeah.
Stunt.
So I
Yeah.
looked at Justin and I was like, "Dude, how are you doing this?" Because 'Cause we're similar ages, and he's out
Yeah.
there in it, running around being a badass, so
Yeah. Did you wanna do talking about in your 20s doing that, I mean, was that when it was time for a stunt on the show, when you were you always like, "Yeah, I'll try it," or was
Oh,
it
yeah.
quick
Like, I
to
was
for
game
them
to
to be
do
like,
as
"No"?
much as I could. Of the stunts. I tried to do as much of the fights as I could to make it. I wanted to challenge myself. I felt like it was part of my job. That being said, I had some gals that did work for me and they were so good and they took so many
Mhm.
hits. And, so you can have the desire, but unless you're Tom Cruise, they're not going to, let you do everything. But I did
Yeah.
try to do as much as I could so that it could be somewhat seamless and it was fun,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and I was watching the second episode with the you and Tom in the cornfield and the helicopters coming over and all of that, and that was specifically something I was looking for. I was like, I'm gonna watch these cuts and see where her stunt double is, and I was surprised in rewatching it. It's been a few years, but I was like, that looks like Erica's face in almost every shot out here. So out of the gate, where you're like, I got all this, I'll do all this, I got the job, I'm gonna take care of.
Yeah, and I wasn't as integral to the show, so I think they were like, "Sure," like
Yeah, throw her in.
throw her in. But yeah, then there comes as you get older the wisdom that you have of knowing your capabilities. And so now
Yeah,
if I'm in a situation where there's something that's requiring a lot of physicality or what have you, I'd be like, okay, it's very rarely do you have a year to prepare yourself for something. So I would be like, if
right.
this person is so much better at it than I am, and your goal is to make me look competent, then please use the person that can do this. I'm not going to be so egocentric that I go, yeah, I can
Yeah.
do some kind of crazy whip kick. No, I'm not practicing it like they are, like let them
Be
have
out
their
of commission
moment.
for a week.
Yeah, I'm going to rip my hammy. So,
Was there a time where you were like, "I'm gonna do it" on the show on Smallville, and once you were in the rig or whatever, you were like, I bit off more than I could chew. I lied. I can't do this."
I had a situation where I had to hang off the side of a faux building and they built this whole thing up. And I was kind of, I was in my harness and stuff like that, but it was like kind of angled strangely. And I had to get
Mhm.
down after a while. And that was when I was like, okay, because it was like pulling on my ribs strangely and I was getting really sick. And then the other thing that was particularly difficult that was season 9 or 10. So I was much more expressive.
Mhm.
I think it was like the silks. I was tied up in silks upside down, and it was a really uncomfortable thing. And I was like, no, take me down. I can only do this many minutes of it. You're not going to hang me upside down in silks anymore. So, yeah, definitely I got wise to, standing up for myself. I remember Welling said something along the lines of like, you're not going to get any special reward for getting a
Yeah.
bunch of bruises,
Yeah.
right? So,
What did you tell me the other day? There's no, what did you say? There's no,
I
reward
never know
for.
what I say. Talk out of my
Yeah, I
ass
know,
most
but
of the.
it was good. It was good. It was in these lines. It was a good quote. I'll retain it at some point. I'll write it down and remember what it was and hold it with me forever. But it was along those lines of, don't do too much for too little. That you're not
Yeah,
going to get anything bonus out of this. So yeah,
yeah.
it was good. You guys have really, not everybody who's been on the show for 10 years could all walk away 25 years later. Obviously, walk away and 25 years later be as welcomed and see all these people come out and sit and listen to you answer questions for an hour. I mean, that's just not something that always happens with a show. So to be as
No,
popular as it was, but also for you guys to still be doing this and can be up there together and can be friends that went through this experience together. Is that important to you to be able to sit there and have that camaraderie between you all these years later?
the camaraderie that we have now is so special.
Mhm.
Um, we have now, the show ended. Most of us didn't see each other for quite a few years.
Yeah,
Kristen and I saw each other sometimes, but the friendships that we've created outside the show are based in our humanity and the life that we've lived and the things we've gone through. And yet we have this with each other because we knew each other in our 20s, and that's rare. And so we're so different than we were then, but we have that beautiful connection of all those years, and it's so lovely. I'm sure that you could say that as well. If you have friendships from your 20s, it helps you maintain versions of yourself that you think are lost. And so you get to have these little moments, but also you have people that you trust deeply that have helped you or held you emotionally through major, major shifts in your life. And that's a rare
yeah,
thing, So it's really bizarre because when we worked, we were just working. We didn't have deep personal connections. And then we developed this thing later over the years in doing these cons. And so you have these people that actually they know you very, very well, but then didn't. And so it is nice because I know not everybody has it, with their fellow castmates and stuff like that. But we were
yeah,
lucky.
yeah. I think, and I mean, it's not. I say this from having been backstage with you all. It's not something that is just on display as actors. It's something
Mm,
very deep and personal between all of you, and I love seeing you interact and share pictures of families and that kind of
yeah,
thing. All these years later,
yeah.
it's meaningful to me, and I'm not even one of you, but it's I think it's important because a lot of those shows, legacy type series and IPs and stuff like that, when you do see these people come out and interact for 5 minutes, and then that's the last time they're gonna interact until they have to be on stage,
Mm,
again with that person, and that's not true for you all, and I think it's a wonderful
no,
thing to watch you interact.
yeah. Well, we feel pretty lucky, and again, it's a rarity. Maybe it speaks to the mutual respect we had for each other when we were working together. There wasn't major drama, and that comes from every element, but it also comes from the person that was the lead of our show. and they do set the tone for how everybody else is going to feel, whether they're going to feel welcome and able to express from their innermost selves. And I know that we all felt that, and there was that respect given to each other. And I think that that's does not happen very often on shows.
Tom does have that very calming
He does.
effect. I get the same feeling as well, but I think, even if he was able to have a fraction of that 20 years ago, it's still very much calming nature in his presence, and I
Hmm.
gotta imagine it's still that way on stage, too, in front of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there's these things that you share when you act with people, and they prove time and time again to be a safe person for you.
Yeah.
Um, that follows into other aspects of your life. And so if you have the opportunity, a lot of people don't have the opportunity to see their fellow actors again. So we just have had this resurgence, and it's been, I think, since 2018 or 19 now, somewhere in there, that all of us started kind of doing these things, and then yeah, just able to kind of reconnect that way, and yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's awesome, and shows no signs of slowing down after 25 years.
I know, it's so crazy.
Crazy to think
I'll
about.
take it.
You take it. Erica, thank you so much for being with us today. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Derek. So nice chatting with you.